Let me take you back about a decade picture. A scrappy 2-3-year-old, sleep-deprived, fueled by too much coffee and boundless ambition. That was me, pouring every ounce of energy, every cent, and endless nights into building a tech startup from scratch. Now, have you ever heard of the term bootstrapping? It's when founders grow their businesses without outside funding, relying on sheer perseverance and minimal resources. That was my life. Every tiny victory felt colossal, landing our first client, shipping our first product update. But let's get real. Startups are a high-wire act. Think of runway in business. It's not about airplanes. It's how long you can keep going before the cash runs out. I learned to stretch every dollar and motivate a small but dedicated team. Through grit and a bit of luck, the company began to thrive. Our innovation pipeline, basically, the steady flow of new ideas into actual products, became the engine powering our growth. I thought our trajectory was unstoppable. But, as you'll soon hear, business success doesn't always protect you from the curveballs that life or family can throw. Cue Act 2. Enter Sarah, my younger sister, fresh from a prestigious business school, resume gleaming. If you've ever felt family pressure, you know what comes next. My parents, ever her champions, started nudging me. Why not bring Sarah on board? She'll take you to the next level. At first, I was excited. Imagine combining family warmth with business vision. It sounded perfect. Synergy is the business buzzword when two parts together make something greater than a part. And that was the hope. Maybe Sarah's management chops would fuse with my tech grit. But family businesses can be a double-edged sword. There's a term for this: nepotism, when relatives gain power based on family ties, not merit. Now, you might be thinking, wasn't this a recipe for conflict? You're right. Sarah wasted no time bringing in her own ideas, some good, some disruptive. She started making big decisions solo, and I watched my key team members, the ones who'd bled with me, fall under her spell. I realized the business wasn't just facing a new phase, it was shifting tectonic plates. Was this family collaboration or a hostile takeover wearing a friendly face? Let me set the scene. A family dinner, the sort that should be filled with laughter and comfort food. Instead, it became my boardroom ambush. Out of nowhere, my parents announced their plans Sarah would take over leadership of the company. She's the future, they insisted. Imagine the term succession planning. In healthy organizations, it's a way to ensure smooth leadership transition. But here, it felt more like a coup d'etat. My heart pounded. This was my company. My blood, sweat, and years of sacrifice. If you've ever been blindsided, you know the mix of shock and disbelief that hits. I tried to argue my case, outlining my track record, my vision. But the decision was made. Was this about business, acumen, or family favoritism? Now you might be thinking, couldn't you just work together? Believe me, I tried. But the trust, what we call social capital, was shattered. Sometimes, family can be your biggest investors, and sometimes, your harshest rivals. I realized I had to act, and quickly. My stake in the company and my identity as its founder was on the line. All right, chess players in the audience, here's where strategy took center stage. I wasn't about to let my life's work be handed over on a silver platter. If you've heard of asset protection, it's when you safeguard what's valuable before trouble hits. That was my next move. I quietly identified our most profitable contracts and intellectual property, the crown jewels. I began transferring these to a new business entity, one I controlled completely. On paper, it was all above board. Contracts were assignable, and clients had the right to choose. But the real game changer? Team loyalty. There's a concept called human capital, the value of people's skills, experience, and relationships. I knew which colleagues shared my vision. We had late-night conversations, honest and raw, about what we'd built and where we wanted to go. Isn't that risky, you might ask? Absolutely. But risk is the currency of entrepreneurship. With every move, I made sure our legal bases were covered contracts, NDAs, the whole 9 yards. No room for error. As Sarah and my parents planned their big takeover, I was quietly laying the foundation for my own new beginning, one that would turn the tables in ways they never saw coming. The day of reckoning arrived. I resigned publicly and unveiled my new company. You should have seen the shock ripple across the room. But here's the kicker. When I stepped out, I took not just the paperwork, but the very soul of the original business, our best clients, our top talent, all the know-how that made us special. This is where the concept of first mover advantage comes in. Because I acted swiftly and strategically, my new venture hit the ground running while the old company stumbled. left with empty shells and broken morale. Now, some might say this was revenge. It certainly felt cathartic, but it was also about resilience, about claiming what was rightfully mine, and proving that true leadership isn't assigned. It's earned, day by day, through trust and vision. Let me ask you, when betrayal knocks you down, do you stay down or do you get up and rebuild? I chose the latter. And guess what? The new company thrived, surpassing even my own wildest projections. Looking back, I learned that protecting your legacy sometimes means walking away and starting over. That's the entrepreneur's journey. Survive the storm, harness your experience, and most importantly, never let anyone else define your worth.
Let me take you back to 2010. Picture this. I was 22, freshly engaged to a woman I truly loved, and we were already planning a summer wedding. Can you remember the giddy optimism of first love? I felt invincible, like nothing could derail our future. But as we settled into my family home, the plot thickened. She couldn't fly home, so she moved in, staying in my sister's room. Everything was set for a smooth transition, or so it seemed. Now, you might be wondering, what could possibly go wrong? Well, here's where the concept of family dynamics and trust infrastructure comes in. Think of trust as the foundation of a bridge. If you weaken one beam, the whole thing can collapse. Looking back, there were no storm clouds on my horizon, just the innocent optimism that comes with youth. But as we know, sometimes the real storms brew out of sight. Let's set the stage, because what seemed like the beginning of a dream was about to become anything but. Suddenly, everything changed. My fiancée transformed from loving partner to someone angry, distant, even violent. Have you ever witnessed a personality shift that feels like a stranger took over someone you love? That's a phenomenon called behavioral dissonance. And it's as confusing as it sounds. She vanished for days at a time, then came back only to leave again. I was desperate for answers. Did I do something wrong? Is she okay? I asked, pleaded, begged, but she kept her pain locked away. Now, some of you might be asking, why didn't you just confront her? Trust me, I did. When communication breaks down, that's called a feedback failure loop. Imagine trying to tune a radio, but all you get is static. I even thought maybe she was struggling with a mental health disorder. Was I missing the signs? I suggested therapy, only to be met with more anger. The more I tried, the worse things got. By spring 2011, I was out of answers. Desperation turned to heartbreak, and I ended the engagement. What I didn't know, the real source of our collapse was hidden in plain sight. Fast forward to 2024. 14 years have passed, and I'm sitting across from my mother. She drops a bombshell. Back then, my parents told my fiancée I was cheating, not just a white lie, but a character assassination. Let that term sink in. It's when false information is used to destroy someone's reputation or relationships. Why did they do it? You weren't ready for commitment, she said. Or even more bizarre, because my brother couldn't find love. It was unfair for me to be happy. Think about that. Sabotaging someone else's future out of misplaced fairness. It's a classic case of relative deprivation, where people feel entitled to level the emotional playing field. Now you might be thinking, couldn't she have just asked me? But trust, once poisoned, is nearly impossible to purify. When someone you love is told a hurtful lie by authority figures, especially those you trust, the effect is like a computer virus corrupting your most important files. Suddenly, all her anger, her confusion, her pain, it made sense. She wasn't losing her mind. She was acting on a betrayal she believed to be true. If only I'd known then what I know now. Misinformation can destroy not just relationships, but entire futures. So, what happens after the truth comes out when it's far too late to fix anything? For 14 years, I never truly dated. I had casual encounters, but couldn't fall in love again. That's not just loneliness. It's called learned helplessness, a psychological state where repeated setbacks make you believe you're powerless to change your life. Can you imagine the frustration realizing that every failed relationship, every empty night, traces back to a lie you never knew existed? It's like being locked in a room and told the key was lost, only to discover years later someone hid it from you on purpose. Now, you may ask, why not move on? The mind isn't a light switch. It rewires itself around trauma. When trust has been shattered, simple intimacy becomes a mountain, not a molehill. I tried to build new connections, but something essential had been broken. The very blueprint for love felt erased. And here's the bitterest irony. The people who caused this damage still expected normalcy, as if their actions didn't ripple through every year of my life. So, where does this leave me? And maybe where does it leave you if you've ever faced family betrayal? My mother asked me recently, "When are you having kids?" "You're almost 40. Can you believe that? It's the concept of emotional gaslighting, acting as if nothing happened while ignoring the wounds inflicted. Now, some of you might wonder, can you ever forgive? Here's the conflict. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from their control. But the scars remain like a watermark on paper, always faintly visible. Family is supposed to be a safe haven, a place for support. But when your own parents become saboteurs, the very definition of home changes. That's called a betrayal trauma, and it alters the course of your life. If there's one thing my story teaches, it's this: truth matters. Lies, even told with twisted good intentions, can cost decades of happiness. To anyone listening, guard your relationships fiercely and never underestimate the power a single falsehood can wield. Because sometimes the real heartbreak isn't what happened, but what could have been.